Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Managing Anxiety in the Storm. My name is Dr. Deidre Sorrell, and I'm a licensed professional counselor and school psychologist, and also your Mrs. Black Maryland International Ambassador 2020. So I have a wonderful, amazing guest with me today. We're going to be talking about mental health and the law, and also we're going to talk about natural hair today and the politics that sometimes come with natural hair. And I'm not talking about just any natural hair. I'm talking about Black women's natural hair. So today I have Attorney Makeba Gibbs. She is the owner of the law office of Makeba Gibbs. She is a community leader. She is an advocate for establishing the mental health court in Charles County, Maryland. So welcome, Attorney Gibbs.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sorrell, and I really appreciate you inviting me to talk about such an important topic. And I'm very excited to talk about natural hair as well.
Wonderful, wonderful. So tell us a little bit about yourself and just what led you into the field of law.
Well, I am always somebody who's been involved civically, and coming from a family that stresses education, it's actually a natural progression for me to have become a lawyer. But I did study communications as an undergrad, and then I went into advertising and public relations because I have more of a creative side. And then after I moved to the DC area, I became more interested in politics and interested in the law and just fighting for, the rights of people. And I became a lawyer, and I'm really excited about it. I've been able to help a lot of people over the last 15 years. I've been here in Charles County practicing. I've been able to help. So I've also handled a variety of cases, criminal to civil, family, protective orders, contract cases, estates and wills. So I have a large variety of experience that I've had. So I'm also, very pleased. I think the profession suits me.
Absolutely, I would agree. And it's wonderful to have someone like you in our community advocating for individuals, but also just advocating for those who have mental health concerns. So what is your specific plan for mental health in the community?
Well, I will say this. I started practicing in Charles County back in 2005, and I was with the Public Defender's Office. You don't pick your clients, you don't pick your cases, and it's all criminal. So people are charged with different types of crimes, from shoplifting up to more serious violent crimes. And what I have found was that if I had to guess, I'd say 80% of the people had some form of mental health diagnosis. And when I would interview them, my very first interview, I started out asking, what is have you ever been diagnosed with a mental illness? And most of the time they would say no and just kind of go on with the rest of the interview. And I started thinking, as I spoke with them, I realized that they weren't either comfortable saying it, or they didn't think what they had been diagnosed with early on in life really was what I was referring to. So I changed that question to, have you ever been diagnosed with a mental illness such as ADHD, depression, anxiety, schizophrenia, bipolar disorder? And 9 times out of 10, they would say, oh yeah, I'm supposed to be on medication for bipolar, or my mom was bipolar. I just stopped taking the medication, and I got a lot of interesting information from that, is that people wouldn't make that correlation between some of the issues that they were having with getting cases after cases, and the fact that they had been diagnosed and they were not following whatever protocol that came out of that diagnosis. So my hope is that Charles County will eventually get a mental health court, and that is, and it's just an alternative to traditional sentencing, where someone may be sentenced to a jail term, a set jail term. If there's a mental health court, or there's also veterans courts and drug courts in the county, then the court can say, after you apply, obviously there's going to be parameters on who can get in and who cannot. But if you get into the program, then it gives the judge an alternative to just sending someone to do a jail term.
Right, right, and that's so important. And I never really, thought of it in those terms, a mental health court. But I see how that is so important, because you do have individuals who, like you said, they may have had an IEP as a child, right? An IEP is an individualized education plan for children who have been determined to have a disability. And it could have been for ADHD, or it could have been for depression. And, oftentimes, of course, you age out of the IEP and become an adult. You don't have an IEP as an adult. And many people may forget that, yes, they had a diagnosable condition that led to them getting an IEP as a child. And that may impact decisions that they make as adults.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'd say that when you have, and even that's why I mentioned anxiety and depression, because I think people just assume anxiety is just, I get, sometimes I just feel a little uneasy, or I'm nervous when I have to go to the doctor. Like, and it's just more than that. You could explain, I'm not the doctor, but it is more than that. And the same thing with ADHD, your decision making ability is substantially affected by that. So you may be, and I use the example, you may be 19 and you're just hanging out playing with your friends, and then someone says, hey, I think that family's on vacation. Let's go inside of their house. And you could probably add to this, but if you have ADHD, that moment where you stop and say, oh, my mother says, hey, don't be a follower, don't do this, don't do that. They immediately go, okay, I'm going to go with you, without even there's also some things that go on with your brain not being fully developed before you're 21. But aside from that, you just don't have the ability to stop and think things through and make a rational decision. You just immediately, impulsively say, sure, I'll go along with you. And I've had so many cases that if they were treated for the ADHD or the bipolar, that in a lot of these cases, they wouldn't even find themselves in it. They'd say, no, I'm going to go on home. I don't want any part of that. So it's actually a little sad, because it's a disability, and if it's not treated. So if someone has, trying to think of other disabilities that someone may have, or other illnesses that they may have, they get a lot of sympathy for it, a lot of support within the community. It's just, for example, like childhood cancers. They'll say, oh, we got to throw our, GoFundMe for them to help get their treatment, get them to the best hospital in front of the best doctors so that they can have a full life. And classes will even do banners to say, get well soon when you have accidents or whatnot, but they don't see mental illness the same way they see those other type of diseases or any kind of, I always hesitate to call it, I want to call it something that's not stigmatizing. So I try to say challenges. People who have other types of challenges, health challenges, they're not treated the same way. So that's something that I really hope that I'm able to make a change on. If I'm able to get on, into the court system in a different capacity.
Yes, and I hope that you are, because I really, really admire your ideas and your passion about the field of mental health. Because like you said, with ADHD in particular, I was trained. In fact, I went to a training about a year ago by Dr. Pfeiffer, who creates intelligence tests, and he said that ADHD is like, when you think of it from a brain standpoint, it's like having no brakes. So imagine driving a car and you have no brakes. You're going down a hill, and your brakes are supposed to work. Typically in a car that's working properly, your brakes will work and you will stop. But it's like having no brakes. Then you're going to just go crash right into that tree. And that's just like the example that you gave with someone who's hanging out with their friends and they're like, hey, let's go rob this house. The brakes aren't working.
Right.
So that it impacts decision making. And I know in the school system, we have something called a manifestation determination meeting, and that's for our IEP students. And if the student does something that would cause them to be suspended for a certain amount of time, we have to meet and determine whether what they did is a manifestation of their disability or not. And that's to protect the child from, being suspended so much that they can't get their education, which creates that school to prison pipeline that we want to fight against.
Exactly. And it puts the onus on the professionals who are trained to recognize those as opposed to the parents. And parents have, responsibility, but everybody has other outside responsibilities. And sometimes they're not even understanding that what behavior they're seeing is related to a diagnosis that they have. They just may say that this person is I have a young son, and I'm avoiding even putting labels on him. It's like, oh, he's wild because he's so busy. I try to, use positive words for it, but a lot of people just say, they'll look over their kid and say, he's so bad. And I never say that about my son, but it's just, it may be something that is out of his control that he just hasn't learned the skills to deal with. And as a parent, I know to look out for those things, but there are families with family dysfunction. They may be in a home with their grandparent, and they may be overworked and tired, and so they don't know. So I do like the fact that they're meeting to determine if it's something that can be worked on.
Right. Yeah. And I just think that a lot of people, again, since we're talking about ADHD, a lot of families think that the ADHD, the child will grow out of it. So it'll fall off, it'll go away, like baby teeth go away. And a lot of people feel that they will grow out of ADHD as well, and they don't realize that this is something that will be with them for the rest of their lives, but it will manifest differently. So there's so much education that needs to happen with a lot of these challenges, as you said.
And if I could say something else about that too, they also feel like if they're on medication or if they're getting treatment for a mental illness, and we've been using ADHD, but could be a host of, that somehow they'll be labeled and it's going to hinder them in the future, when it's just the opposite. If they're not treated for it, they will not be able to, it's just bottom line, they will not be able to aspire to the type of heights that you would want them to. And it's really a little unfair for you to say, well, I'm not going to get treated for it because of how I think other people are going to view it. It's really based on outside pressure as opposed to what's really necessary for that child. But it's complicated, I know. And again, it all, I think, comes back down to the stigma.
Yes.
That these are brain disorders. If I'm characterizing that correct, that's how I view it. They're brain disorders, and people just don't look at it the same way as somebody who has, some kind of physical disability, physical deformity, like a cleft palate. They'll say, oh, we can get that fixed, but they don't have the money. There's all types of things that are set up that people get support for, and it's just not the same. And you would be heartbroken if you could talk to 19-year-olds who've made decisions that are going to follow them for the rest of their lives. It can be as simple as the example of going into the house. Let's say they aren't able to really steal anything from there, but they've gone inside and they get a charge, even if they don't have a record, because the case can be expunged eventually. Just having to go in there and sometimes being processed through, it gives them the idea that now, they're not able to do other things with their life because they've had that experience with the criminal justice system. So it's something that I really hope changes eventually in our society, but it does take, people like yourself just being involved in educating parents as to why it's important.
Yes. Thank you so much. Yes. So I just want to switch gears a little bit. I know that we wanted to talk a little bit about natural hair as well. And there are politics that are associated with natural hair. I think it shouldn't be like that, but it is like that. And it's always been, hair has always been an important topic for Black women, even, as Africans. The continent of Africa is so diverse. so many different, and I'm speaking of ancient Africa, so many different,
Mm-hmm.
different civilizations and tribes and different hairstyles. But from the research that I've done throughout the entire continent, there was so much care that went into hair. I mean, the ancient Egyptians established, they started wigs. They wore wigs, they wore hair weaves. Of course, there was braiding, there were Bantu knots, all kinds of stuff. So that's always been a very big deal for us as Black women. But with us having natural hair, being in this society, being in the United States of America, where we have a more Eurocentric norm in terms of hair, how do you think natural hair has impacted Black women in the career field, and even in relationships, intimate relationships? Long question.
I know it's very broad too, but I like that. But so as far as career wise, I know there is a lot of pressure to wear you're as a Black woman to wear your hair straight, to wear wigs or weaves, which are very popular now. And I think it's changing. There's a lot more hair product, natural hair products. There's, I think, a natural hair movement. But I also think that in some circles, it's still expected that you would have your hair natural. And for me, it's just growing up, we were just always encouraged to wear our hair natural. So I've developed different styles for myself. Normally it's pinned up and tucked away when I'm in business, but then other times I have my hair out, and you may see me with my hair in an afro or pin back or slick back, but I rarely straighten it. And there's pressure. There's pressure. I call it the Beyonce effect because, that's just kind of how people believe you're supposed to look when you're glamorous. And so even myself, I'm very confident in wearing my hair natural. Sometimes I feel a little pressure. You see people with weaves, they look, all my nieces wear them. They come on and off. But it is a lot of pressure. But I think it's becoming more acceptable to wear your hair natural. So I'm very happy about that. What was the second part of the question? I'm sorry.
So just how do you think natural hair affects Black women in careers, but also in intimate relationships?
Well, I know my sister told me a story. When she met her husband, that the first few times he would stay over, she said she would not put her scarf on at night because she didn't want him to see her in her headscarf. And we wear hair scarves at night because we have to protect our hair, because the oils will be stripped away if it's on pillowcases, if it's not a silk pillowcase. And some people don't understand that my hair will tend to get dry very quickly. So if I don't cover it, it can dry out much faster, which will cause breakage. And so she said after, a couple of times, she says, I have to put my scarf on. I don't want my hair to, rub off. But there is pressure. But again, it's just all about, I think, having that communication where there's understanding. Most of the, people will have had sisters or mothers where they grew up seeing that. And if they're not, even if they're not African American, they may know other people in their family who have to have those certain, protocols with their hair in order to keep their hair healthy. But yeah, I mean, it's just a matter, I think, of communication. It's our hair is different. Our hair is going to be different than maybe, Caucasian hair. And it just has to be that education and understanding of it. But I have to put a scarf on.
Yeah.
Wear a scarf at night.
Me too.
Every night, regardless.
Me too. I heard you say that in your family, you all were encouraged to wear your hair natural. And it's refreshing to hear that, because in a lot of families, someone going natural is almost like an act of rebellion. I know in my family, it was an act of rebellion. you know. And I think it's some members of my family still see me as, oh gosh, when is she gonna fix her hair, you know?
And it's such a burden to carry that, because when I relax my hair, the relaxer would burn, and then you'd sometimes get like injury to your scalp because of these harsh chemicals you're putting on it. And I would look so nice when I left the hairdresser. Then within like a day or two, it never looked the same. And so it would always be in a ponytail. And so I'm like, what's the point in doing all that damage to my, particularly to my scalp, if I'm not going to be able to wear it? And back to my family, my dad was really the one. If he would see a woman out, and a black woman out, and she had her hair and it was natural, he would go out of his way to go over and lift her up to say, hey, you look beautiful, my sister. You look gorgeous. I love your hair. And I find myself doing the same thing, because you really need that reinforcement that your hair is beautiful. It's authentic when I say it, because it is really nice to see. And it's just, to me, it's I don't have to worry about the conditions of the weather affecting how my hair, if it moves, like as it transforms, it kind of transforms from being like a full fro to a smaller fro. Then when I put the braids in and take the braids out, it's kind of a curly, afro, and then it gets more compact as the curls kind of start to come out. So I'm embracing every stage of it. And even this, like, I just have it tucked up. I have to say to myself, Makeba, you don't need edge control. You don't have to do that. If I choose to, that's fine. But if I don't want to, I should still be comfortable with it, being a little on the fuzzy side. I can't feel the pressure to be a certain way every day, because with natural hair, it's going to evolve as as time goes on. So yes. I have to remind myself not to be too pressured by it, no matter what. Even if I'm going to be on a Zoom call, it just depends on what I feel like doing. So if I want to do a twist and do a twist out, like I recently got a photo session done for my birthday, and I think I look very glamorous, but I tell people that's not how I'm going to look every single day. So yeah, but I do think it's changing. I think things are changing as far as Black women and how we wear our hair and how we are perceived. I just thought of another thing recently. Someone said, Makeba, you're a hippie. I don't know what point he was trying to make of it, but he wanted to label me. And I think part of it is because I wear my hair natural. Sometimes it's out like in an afro, sometimes it's tucked in, sometimes it's twisted, sometimes it's not. But I just refuse to be put in a box because I wear my hair natural. I think this is just, my choice. It's how my hair grows out of my scalp. And I don't have to be labeled. I could be extremely conservative and wear my hair natural. I can be very, liberal and wear my hair natural. It's just a style that I think suits me, and it suits more people than they probably realize.
I agree. And I do feel that we have to take the wheel and control the narrative on this, because I believe that there's a trauma-shame connection when it comes to our hair. And of course, other things like skin color, that's another discussion. But when you think about slavery and the trauma that we faced as a people, the first thing that happened when we were put on slave ships was they made us shave our heads. So when we think of the women in Africa and all the just beautiful things they would do with their hair, all the styles, imagine someone making you shave all that off, and you become a slave, and then you are beaten down and told that your hair is ugly, is nasty, is dirty, and all of that for years and years and years. And I think that trauma turned into shame, because shame means that you blame yourself for your oppression or your abuse. And I think that as families have said things to us as girls, not necessarily in your family, but in other families, like, oh, we got to fix that nappy hair. Or, you need to cover that up. Or we're going to perm that. We're going to put a relaxer in your hair because you got bad hair. Or, putting other, people with a certain silkier or straighter texture of hair on a pedestal by saying, well, they have good hair. And these are all things that we have to shift the narrative and get away from that, so that our natural hair is viewed as not only normal but beautiful, you know.
Absolutely.
Yes.
I think that's beautiful. I couldn't have said it better. I absolutely understand that. I understand exactly what that shame means. It's just you can even see it in television shows. I know I grew up in the 70s and 80s, and a lot of times there were light-skinned girls with very curly hair, A Different World, Lisa Bonet on The Cosby Show. I mean, it was just like she was like the standard of beauty, and a lot of it had to do with her hair. And where's the girl with hair like me? You see it a lot more. You see it a lot more. But then, there are shows that I've seen recently where that's still, the case. But I think Hollywood, you can't look to Hollywood to confirm your beauty. You have to do it on your own. And I think it's important that, you, again, like I do, you just lift yourself up and do your research, because I didn't even know that about the slave ships and having your hair shaved and all that. But once you start to learn more and really just I guess just reinforce these ideals on your own of beauty, the better you're going to feel about yourself, and the self-esteem is going to come up.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I'm really a stickler for wearing my hair natural in the world of pageantry. And I have had pressure to straighten my hair and to wear wigs. And I've during the quarantine, I have worn a wig, because we're in a quarantine. But, that type of pressure, I will not submit to, because I feel so strongly about showing that natural hair can be beautiful. So.
Absolutely. All forms of natural hair, because my hair, when it gets wet, it's extremely curly. I don't wear it out like that much, because it will eventually just get tangled. It's not going to stay curly like that. My hair is very long. It comes down past my shoulder blades. But again, like that is how it looks as you stretch it out. But our hair will, you have shrinkage, and so it's going to shrink back up. It will look as short as your hair looks, but it actually, if you were stretch it, it would come down this long. So, yeah, there's just a lot of pressure out here. But I'm actually very proud of the fact that I'm natural, and I wear my hair like a crown. And I mean, I'm not gonna. But again, I was raised to see the beauty in it, even though there's a lot of pressure. I'm very proud of the fact that I can be an example to other naturals out there, young and old, because we need that. We need that reinforcement.
Yes, and you are definitely a role model to many in the community and beyond. So, if people want to get in touch with you and find out more about what you're doing in the community, or if maybe they want to talk to you about, possibly getting some legal representation, how can people get in touch with you?
Well, you can call my number, which is 240-776-2701, or you can just do an internet search and you'll find me. It's Makeba Gibbs. My name's on the screen, and I'd be happy to, meet with you. And if there's any questions that you have, anything further that I've talked about today, I am pretty accessible. So if people want to reach me, they can certainly do that. And I appreciate that. I appreciate you having me on the show. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Well, thank you so much. I enjoyed the conversation too. And I feel like this could have gone on for hours and hours, because there's so much to talk about. These are great topics. Two of my favorite topics to talk about. But thank you. So do you have any last words for everyone before we end the show?
Just understand that there is a stigma behind mental illness. I guess there's a stigma with some natural hairs in the workplace, and that the more you educate yourself, or if you don't have that information, that you reach out to people who do, I think the better off you'll be. If you have a child that you believe could benefit from an evaluation, I certainly would seek that out. And I think that's pretty much it.
Right. Well, wonderful, wonderful. Well, thank you again for taking the time to be on my show and to talk to everyone about these topics. And I'm just going to go ahead and close out by asking by thanking everyone for watching this episode of Managing Anxiety in the Storm. This is my last episode for season 1. So hopefully I'll be able to do a season 2 sometime next year. I look forward to doing that. I'm going to have to come up with some great topics. So if any of you have any ideas or any suggestions, please feel free to leave them in the comments. Or to just let me know if there's something that you would like for me to address in a future show. But thank you again, and I will see you soon, and take care. Bye-bye.